Hi friends, it's me again, Jeremy Parish. You may know me from such YouTube channels as Jeremy Parish, this very YouTube channel right here. Last fall and this past winter, I pestered you endlessly about pre-ordering a series of books called the NES Era. Due to popular demand, we brought them back for pre-order. Very briefly, we've opened up another pre-order window that closes 1 week from today. But you can buy all 3 volumes of the NES Era, that's 1, 2, and 3, at limitedrungames.com. Now, in case you missed all my previous nagging and promotions, the NES Era books are not the same as NES works. Rather than being in-depth looks at each individual game in a console's library, the NES Era actually takes a slice of time and looks at, very briefly, every game released for every console in a specific region during that period. The 3 volumes break it up into Japan's consoles before the NES launched in America, the NES launch period from 1985 through the end of '87, and the peak of the NES era before the advent of 16-bit consoles in August 1989. Each of these books is between 220 and 250 pages, looking at about that many games, 1 game per page. Each page focuses primarily on photography of the packaging and the cartridge, a single screenshot, and a brief write-up to tell you what this game is and what's its place in history. These are, yes, coffee table books, the real thing. And they're not just looking at NES games despite the title. For example, the NES Era Volume 1 looks at not only the Japanese Famicom from July 1983 through September 1985, shortly before the NES launch, but also every other console that shipped in Japan in the early 80s. That's everything from the Epoch CassetteVision and Super CassetteVision to the imported Bandai Arcadia, to Casio's PV-1000, the Gakuen TV Boy, the Epoch Game Pocket Computer, and probably something that I'm forgetting too. Oh right, and the Sega SG-1000. All the games are arranged in chronological order of release to the best of our knowledge. Volume 1 paints a picture of the Japanese console industry that birthed the NES and how that all came into focus. Volume 2 focuses on the NES launch, but also on competing systems. Not only the Sega Master System and the Atari 7800, new systems that rose to compete with the NES, but also holdovers from the original pre-crash era of video games in America. That's the Intellivision, the Atari 2600, there's even a couple of 5200 games in there, and let's not forget, although we'd like to, the Atari XE game system. And finally, Volume 3 is much more about these systems having established themselves, really maturing and coming into their own before the 16-bit consoles arrived on the scene. So that's all the previous consoles I mentioned before, plus, at the very, very end, bringing up the rear, Game Boy and Lynx. These books will be in your hands, by the time the NES turns 40 this October. You can get those right now as pre-orders at limitedrungames.com. I'm excited for these books to arrive. I'm proud of how they're turning out. I'm a little embarrassed about how incredibly nerdy they are, but also proud of how nerdy they are. It's kind of my thing, and I hope you'll enjoy them too.